It is a great honor and privilege to introduce Gideon Lotan. Your family name in Holland was Litten. And Gideon, you were a hidden child in Holland during the Shoah, from the most incredible parents, such heroes. And can you tell us, we're here in your beautiful home in
Kfar Azar,
which is very close to Tel Aviv.
Yeah, it belongs now to Ramat Gan.
So Gideon, it is such an honor and a privilege to be in your beautiful home. And could you tell us a little bit about your life story, your incredible life story?
Well, I was born not in Holland. I was born to Dr. Manfred Litten, who was an educator and graduated from the Berlin Humboldt University at the mid 30s of the previous time, and Shoshana Jansie Litten, who was also an educator, born in Amsterdam. And I was born to them in the free city of Danzig, nowadays Gdansk, in Poland. At the time it was a free city with a wonderful Jewish community. My parents apparently came from Berlin to Danzig in order to get a post for my father at a very high standard high school erected there in Danzig. And he taught there the Jewish students, of course, but I was born there at 1936. And life was quite not easy was at the beginning. Life was very good in Danzig, and but in 1933, that's even before I was born, 1933, as most of the people there were of German origin, there were also elections to the local parliament. And the Nazi party, as well as in main Germany, won the elections by over 50%, even more than in Germany. So they ruled the country, since it was Danzig, you must know, it was a city country, like Liechtenstein and Luxembourg nowadays. And ruled by the Nazi party. But at the beginning, the leader of the Nazi party in Danzig was quite moderate. He was a civilian, and he was quite moderate. But later, after my birth, in 1936, the Nazi party fired him, and he fled to England, because he was against the Nazi party, because he started to know what they were doing to the Jews. And instead of him, they nominated a German general. And then things started to get rough in Danzig. The Jewish were persecuted. And it took only 2 years after my birth that all the Jews had to flee Danzig to other places. Most of the people emigrated either to United States or to Israel, Palestine at the time. My late parents were great Zionists, because my father was in Germany at the Mizrahi youth organization. But apparently they were Zionists, and they knew that they were going to Palestine as well as most of their friends, other families. But at that time, my father got a call from the Youth Aliyah of the Jewish Federation, of the Jewish Generation, to lead a farm in Holland, in Gouda, a farm for Jewish pioneers. It was like a small mikveh Israel It was a agriculture high school. And as most of the Jews, as him as well, knew at the time that Holland was going to be, was going to stay natural and
Neutral.
Neutral during the war to come, and as it was at the First World War. So they were very, very much enthusiastic to get that nomination. My mother as well, because she was originally from Amsterdam. And so they moved to Holland. And in late 1938, they moved to Holland.
So here's a picture of your father. Do you have any recollections of your father?
Very little. Very little, but because you must know that I left them at the age of 6+. 6+. And okay, there's a picture of my mother as well.
Your mother was Shoshana.
Shoshana, yes. So we moved to the city of Gouda. Gouda is known as Gouda. We say Gouda, not Gouda, like Gouda cheese. It's Gouda because in Dutch there is no gay. There's only a Ga. So we moved over to Gouda, and there were many Jewish pioneers to be led and to be managed. And at first, I'm speaking about late 38, at the beginning, the life was very, very convenient over there. I was the youngest, of course. I was the son of the managers, so I was very, very much spoiled. And I had a good time there on the whole at the farm. And the farm was actually was not only a farm for study farm, because they also grew agriculture products, and they have special places to grow the crop in the winter. What you call how do you call this hamama? This is. Warm crops. How do you call this in English? I don't remember the name now. You grew in the winter time under glass, So we used to also to market the merchandise, the agriculture merchandise, vegetables and things like that. We used to move them also to the market over there.
And you remember growing
And
up?
this is, I remember very well. I have even pictures from that time, but sorry, I haven't prepared them for you, because normally when I give the story, when I give my story to the audience, I have a slideshow showing those pictures from the farm and the people. And as I said at the beginning, this was very, very convenient. But as you all know, in May 1940, Holland was conquered by the Nazis. And at the beginning...
So we have a picture of this is the...
The what?
This is the home that...
Yes, that's the home. That was the main building.
And you remember the building? You remember?
Lived. Yes, sure. This was the main building where the people lived, where the students lived after, and my parents.
Gideon, can I just ask you, what is your earliest recollections?
Well, I recollect actually at 3 years onwards, when I was there, it was over 3 years onwards, I recollect all the time, and all the beautiful time I used to go along. We had also a dog, a German Shepherd at the farm, and my father named him by a Hebrew name, and his name was Caleb. dog, you know. So he named him Caleb. Later on, due to the hunger period, we had to give him away. But I remember the dog, I remember the students, and I even remember Hanukkah and Christmas, because Hanukkah and Christmas was at the same time, and they used to give me presents also for like Christmas time and Hanukkah time. So, but on the whole, my father was religious, so every Friday we had Kabbalat Shabbat and everything as should be done. So as I said, the farm life was good. I was spoiled as by all other pupils there who were 11 years older than me. So I had a good life. But this was actually good until May 1940, when, as I said before, Holland was conquered by the Nazis.
Did you have any siblings?
No, I was the only child. I was the only child because my parents were in their 30s when I was there. And at the beginning of the Nazi rule, again, things were gradually okay. But as you know, in Holland, when they started the persecution and the enlisting at the municipality and stamping of the ID cards with a J, Jood, a Jew, this started to get worse. And of course, all of us had to carry the yellow Magen David, you know, yellow star with the Jood assignment on it. So, but we had one favor from the Nazis actually, because we were producing crops. We were what you call an emergency firm. We had some status which enabled us to live further than other Jews who were sent to the transfer camp and eventually to the concentration camps later on. So we could lead more. But my mother, who was managing the farm, and my father did most of the teaching, including Hebrew, for the students. They got in contact with already from the start of the occupation. They got in contact with one of the groups of the Dutch resistance, and they started to make preparations for the future, because they knew that apparently they should be driven to the transfer camps and eventually to the concentration camps. And in order to avoid this, she got in contact, as I said, with the Dutch underground, one of the groups, because in Holland were many groups, the Westerwil group, and through other people, mainly through one of the Dutch agriculture aides we had, a Christian aide, who did the main connection from that time. And what she did, what she thought of was to find hiding places for all of the students, and for beforehand to arrange false papers, which included IDs without the J's, with a false name instead of the Jewish name, and of course tickets for food tickets, which were new false food tickets.
Like food stamps?
What you call tickets for limited food provision.
They gave like booklets with food stamps.
Food stamps, and but the food stamps carry also the booklet or the food stamps. They carry the name, and they had to put false food stamps because with the new name of the students. So this she started to arrange beforehand. One other thing she did, my mother, in order to avoid the instruction due to come by the Nazis for the evacuation, she got in contact with a local hospital, a big hospital, and the doctors favored her, and she told them, please take a few students of mine and regard them as dysenteria patients, which is a very, very effective illness, and the Germans are afraid of infective illnesses. So the Germans, when they heard that, they left that altogether for some time as well. And because we had to be, no one could enter and outside and enter. How do you call it?
Quarantine.
We had to be quarantined. The whole farm had to be quarantined. So she took some other time. She managed to enlarge the time for the evacuation, and still we didn't have the final instructions, because it came in letters, you know, the final instructions to.
Gideon, were you in touch with, or your parents, with grandparents and uncles and aunts on your father's and your mother's side?
Well, to start with my father was had a brother who emigrated made Aliyah to Palestine, Israel later, to Palestine prior to the war, Harry Litten, and he lived in Nahariya. And they had correspondence with him. Now both his parents lived in Berlin, because he came out of Berlin, and but due to the war, the parents from letters, they had no connection with them, actually practical connection, face-to-face connection. And what I remember is that in 1940, that's prior to the German invasion, my late grandfather, Raphael Litten, died in Berlin. And at that time, I have even pictures from that time. My father grew a beard, you know, because of his late father. And that I remember him going on for a month as usual, you know. He was bearded due to the death of his father.
For the Shiva?
For the Shiva, yeah, for the Shiva and the monthly period, you know. He was with a beard. And so he died. My grandfather and my mother was taken later on in 1943 or 1944 to the camps, to concentration camps, and she was murdered over there.
Did you ever see your father's parents, your grandparents?
No, I never saw them. I never actually saw them, because they were in Berlin and we were in Danzig, and later on we were in Holland, Netherlands, and so I never saw them. But speaking about my grandmother, because after many years after the war, not many years ago, I think it was in 2010, I went to Berlin for the laying of a Stolperstein in front of the Humboldt University, in front of the university, famous university, and they laid because he made his thesis and doctorate at the Humboldt University in Berlin, and there was a big ceremony, not only for him but for 19 other Jews who graduated from the Humboldt University. The ceremony, I was invited to the ceremony with my youngest son, and I found another relative of mine in Germany who was from Hanover. He was an ex-judge from Hanover, and we both, he and my son, and we attended the ceremony. It was a very, very great ceremony.
And you have the actual picture of the...
Now the ceremony was for my late father and another 19 students from the Humboldt University. The ceremony was attended by the president of the university and also the vice president of the German Reichstag, as well as families from all other 19 Jews who were nominated there with the Stolperstein. And now here is the Stolperstein of my late father. I don't have a grave of him, and this is of course the only memory I have.
And he died in February 1945.
Yes.
Just before
at Auschwitz.
Literally so soon. It was just a few months
Now I'll
then.
show you another picture. Now here I am. I'm on the right hand side. I'm saying Kaddish on behalf of all the 20 students, as well as my father.
It must have been very emotional.
Very, very emotional it was. You know, we are all in kippot. Even the president of the university was not a Jew. He was with the kippah, and everything was a kippah. Maybe I'll see another picture here, which may interest you. Here I am with, I'm saying that Kaddish here with all the Stolpersteiner prior to their embasement. You see all the stones here.
It's amazing. And was this covered in the press?
Yes, this was covered in the German press and television and everything.
It's amazing. Gideon.
And wait a minute, I have something else. Oh, I think this is enough here.
And you were well received.
Pardon?
You were well received.
I was well received, and also I carried out I'll show you. I carried out a lecture at the Senate of the university, and I chose to speak in English, although I speak German as well.
Do you remember what the topic of your lecture was?
The topic was that my hidings and look for the future, positive look for the future.
That's amazing.
So,
and Gideon, can I ask, with your mother's parents, your grandparents on your mother's side? Or
now my grandparents, my mother, I did not meet them because apparently my grandmother on my mother's side died earlier, but died quite when I was very little. And I think my father from my mother's side died as well early, so I did not meet them.
And uncles and aunts?
Uncles, I said I had an uncle who went to Palestine.
And on your mother's side?
And not on my mother's side, I did not meet any one of them, but which I did meet, and I still meet, I'm in contact with the families as well. They had very, very good friends from Gouda, and also from Gouda, which is the Fromen family, and also from Israel, from Danzig, which are two families. One is Goldhaber and one is Barenbaum, which I met later when I emigrated to Israel in 1946, which I lived with them, and they are actually like parents as for me. So, so back to the previous story. As I said, my late mother made all the arrangements for the safe evacuation of the students prior to the even to the instructions to be evacuated to the transfer camps. And when the day arrived, the dim day arrived, they had to go. All the students got their instructions. Each of the students got the instruction to go to the local train station and to travel from there to Westerbork, which was the transfer camp. Now, what they did, they actually came to the station, bought tickets as well. Some of the students did not enter the train. They got either on bicycle or by other transportation because they had false papers and they were not without the yellow star, and they went to the hiding places. Others went on the train and on the way to Westerbork departed the train at other stations and went to their pre-organized. Everything was pre-organized. You must know that first of all they had false papers. Then everything had to be pre-organized with the people who had to be where their prospected hiding places were. And this has to be organized by the underground because the people, not as most people in Holland, they had to be people who believed in the hiding and were not without any connections with the local government or the local German authorities. So this has to be organized very, very, very carefully. But my mother did all this with the underground, with the resistance group she was contacted with, and this was very, very successful. Most of the students managed to successfully get over the war. Most of them were saved. Most of the students were saved, apart from some 7 students were not saved, were caught, including my father. My father was already caught in 1943 from one place of hiding to another place.
Was your father also involved in the resistance?
He was involved, but not so much as my mother, because he was caught already in 1943, and he went to later on. He went first of all to Westerbork, from Westerbork to Theresienstadt, and from Theresienstadt to Auschwitz, where he was finally murdered there.
In February 45?
February 45. Now, my mother brought me to a Christian family.
I'm just going to show the picture. This is in
by the name of Den Berge. Yes.
This is in 1943. This is the most amazing picture with you and your mother in 1943.
That's prior to, that's in 1943, prior to the time when I left the farm, because we left in later in August, around August, we left the farm. We left the farm.
Do you remember
1943.
Do you remember the day?
This I remember very well, because I had my birthday. It was close to that time. I was born in 7 August 1936, and in 1943 we went. She took me to the Den Bergen family. This was all pre-arranged, of course, with the resistance, in order to be sure that this is a safe place for hiding, and has no other connections with the local authorities or Nazi regime.
Gideon, can I ask you, do you remember saying goodbye to your father?
No, I don't remember that. because I knew, I did not know that my father was caught even. At that time I didn't know anything about, I thought they will come back and fetch me from that place. But as I said, in 1943, my mother took me to the family, and this family was quite unique because they had some preparations to do beforehand. They were asked, actually, by the resistance group, they were asked by the resistance if they were ready to save a Jewish child. They were asked for that. And they had to sleep over it, and finally they agreed to accept the child, in spite the fact that the mother had a child, a girl, only of 2 weeks old. She had a baby of 2 weeks old, and another 5 children of her own. And so, but she decided that she took in to take in a Jewish child and to save him from the Nazis. And after a short, you can take the big picture here. And this picture was...
They knew that it was very dangerous. They knew.
They knew it was very dangerous because people were paid in order to people were actually paid in order to give away Jews who were either in hiding or in other places where they could not be taken.
They were collaborators as well.
Yes, most of the Dutch people actually were either did not anything, were passive, mostly were passive, or they were collaborating with the Nazis. There's something on the floor. So apparently it was really rough for me to, as a spoiled child on a farm with is apparently a good and easy life, and to be transferred to a Catholic family with very, very strict education, not known to me. And at the beginning, it was very hard for me, and I very, very...
It's just another picture.
You can take it from the other one. I think it's better. From the other. Okay, so the same book.
It's just a picture of the family. Do you remember the first day when you met them, when you met the family?
Yes, of course, because it was very harsh for me, because you must know, I was, as I said, I was a spoiled child coming into a very, very different family, different kind of education, and I suffered very, very much and wept at night during my lay at night at the first nights. But the thing is that this took only not a very long time, because I got used, because all of the children were very cooperative with me, and I liked them very, very much. And so it took me some time to get over my sadness and my weepings, and I got friendly with the children, and especially with one of them called Louis, who was at my age, and we got very good friends with each other.
I'm just going to show again the picture. It's amazing, with such a large family, and they did this voluntary. They did this.
It is completely voluntary, and
knowing how dangerous it was.
Knowing how dangerous it was, yes. So life was not easy with the family, but all the children, were like one group, and they grew with this harsh education, strict, harsh education. One memory of that time was especially to be remembered. When I had one memory, especially remembered, because you must know that I lived with them with good or worse. And one example of the strict education was the mother, Mary. She was an ex-teacher, and this was very positive for me, because I could not go, even I had a false, I was known as a son of a relative sister, you know, and a relative sister of medicine, you know what you call, a relative sister living in another city, a relative of the mother. And she had no, because she was very busy at the hospital, she could attend for me, so she gave it over to her relatives. This was my cover for most of the children, apart from the oldest son, Joseph Jr., who knew that I was Jewish. Yeah,
and the other children didn't know?
Didn't know that I was Jewish, and I was like quite friends with them. And so this was quite...
because they all were blonde haired, and
now all of them were blonde hair, and I myself was black hair. So
you were Mary.
And but what they did is what Mary did when we went public. Sometimes she put a hat on my black hair, so they wouldn't be distinguished from the others.
And did they change your name?
I was called Miss Bommeltier was my name, but Gideon, they used also Gideon, but my family name was different. I even don't remember what name it was, but as I said, it was dangerous for me to go to school every day, because all the children went every day to school or to kindergarten, and I had to stay at home. But as I said, Mother Mary was a teacher, and she took apart from her part of being busy at her household, she took time for me every day for an hour or so to study reading and writing and arithmetics, the basics. So, because you must remember, I was only over 6 years old. So I didn't go to school. So she taught me all the basics, and this was the positive part of it. Now the example I want to give from the strict education was, she was a teacher, as I said. Now she had a small table, what you call a luach. What do you call black?
Like a blackboard.
A blackboard. So she had a small blackboard on which she wrote different things for my study as well. But each day she used to make a table on the blackboard, on the small blackboard, with all the names of the students, of the children, as well as mine. And she put a number near the name. What means the number? A number. Now the numbers meant that each child got a mark for misbehavior. If you got 1 mark, it's 1. If you got 2 marks, it's 2. At the end of the day, chef, we called him chef, which is actually Joseph. Chef came back from work. He was quite a wealthy cloth marketeer. He was a cloth marketeer. So he came back from work, and she gave the blackboard, the small blackboard, to him with all the marks. Now, if the mark says 1, you have to get 1 beatings, one punishment.
Like a little harding. A harding.
1. And if it says 2, you have to get 2. So he sat on his chair. Each of the children came to him according to the blackboard. He took off his or her pants or shorts, took out his
Oh, you hear the belt?
his belt and gave each child the number of blows he had won that day due to misbehavior. I cried at the beginning, but everyone got his because it was in Hebrew we say tzarat rabim chatzi nechama, so you know what that is. So we all grew that way, and we all apparently it did not spoil me, and I understood because everyone got this, and I misbehaved as everyone did. Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but this was the kind of instruction or the kind of education we got there. I understand also that it was good for Chef when he came from back home from his stress work to let out some steam and to beat each of his dear children, you know.
I'm going to just show the pictures of the children with the parents, with Mary and Joseph, and here you can see the children look actually quite happy. They look very.
Yes.
Were you treated equally?
Well, I was treated 100% equally. Now another thing was that after 6 months of my stay there, my mother knew that it would be difficult for Mary to manage all the children because she had to fire all their maids. We were Christian maids because of the danger to be caught. And then she sent one of her students by the name of Lida, later on Eliada, to be with me and to tend for the family as a maid.
I'm going to show a picture of Lida. And during this time, did your mother, your father, did they come and visit, or did you have any contact?
No, my father, as I said before, my father was caught already in 1943, so he did, of course, couldn't come. My mother only visited me at the beginning. I remember maybe only one time, and I always expected her to come again and eventually to fetch me, but she didn't. Of course, she did not come. But this was only because I was expelled from my family nearly from the age of 6.
They made the most difficult decision.
Yes, they made. Now, my mother continued to work in Amsterdam mainly, and other places as well, to work with the underground, to tend for not only for her students but for other Jews as well, to let them flee through through France and to north of France through the heavy snow, the Pyrenees mountains to Spain, which Spain being neutral, they could go off from Spain to Israel, and many of the students went that way, and not only students but her students but others as well. And she arranged for money and to false papers for all those people who went over to Spain and eventually go to Israel with the Mapilim boats, you know.
So, given your mother could have saved herself as well. She could have also gone.
Now, my mother worked all the time without any movement, you know. And one of their students, Barry Asher, actually wrote a book about his experience during the war, and he nominated the book in favor of her because she actually saved him. And maybe I'll show the book.
This is a book by Barry Asher.
This is a book by Barry Asher. Okay, I'll show you the other side of the book. This is Barry Asher. He was one of the students of my late parents and saved due to the operation of my mother. And this is a book he dedicated the book to my mother and to other underground people.
Shoshana Litten, yeah.
You see? Now my mother, he wrote about my mother as well, a lot about my mother. This is Joop Westerwil, head of the Dutch group my mother was enlisted to. He was caught and executed by the Nazis when they caught him. This man, and I wanted to show you something else. This here is, in the book, is my mother, and again the house from another view. The house of the Achshara, the house of the school agriculture school in Gouda.
Your parents were incredible heroes.
Now another aspect of my mother, she, as I said, she continued to work for the underground restlessly, but that one day in 1944, 4 days before, it was in beginning of June, 4 days before the invasion to Normandy of the Americans and Brits, she was caught at the Utrecht station by the Nazis, and this was due to an informer who was eventually a member of the underground. Inside, he was an informer, and due to his testimony to the Nazis, she was caught on her way to another city. Before she mounted the train at the station of Utrecht. So she was taken to Westerbork, where she met my father. This was in 1940. My father was already from 43, and she was 1944. They were both sent at the same day to Theresienstadt, and from Theresienstadt they were both sent to Auschwitz. As I said before, my father was murdered at Auschwitz. My mother managed to get alive at Auschwitz, but she was sent by the Nazis to a city in Czechoslovakia, at the northwestern part of Czechoslovakia, at a village named Zvodau. That's a city where she was sent to. This was a city with prisoners, lady prisoners, Jewish and Roma, gypsies, from due to work at a nearby Siemens factory for aircraft parts by the Nazis. And they lived there at forced labor camp. It was a forced labor camp. Each morning they got very, very little food. Each morning they were taken to the factory, the Siemens factory, for almost 12 hours, even sometimes even more. Then taken back to the camp where they got little or no food at all. And eventually she spent the time nearly up to the end of the war. I found out later that when the Americans came nearer to that camp, the Nazis took the women to a death march, and there she perished. During the death march, I got only a date and a bureaucratic date from the Red Cross, which is after the war, which is a date for people who actual date of death is not known. This I found out from many sources, including the archives of the 8th Armored U.S. Army, and also from the Holocaust Museum in Washington, from which I got even a certificate of her personal prisoner, including number. This I found out later, but that's the way she actually perished through the death march eventually. And now I carried on at the...
I just want to mention, you showed me before, when your father was in Westerbork.
Yeah, my father was in Westerbork.
He even was involved in the school.
Yes, he was even in Westerbork. He was involved in the school.
And here we have a certificate.
And he signed down a certificate of the late, of not the late, he's still alive, of Professor Alfred Drucker, who presented that certificate in his book to me.
Sure. And you in touch with Alfred?
I was in touch with him for some time, when of course, he gave me the book and he presented it.
And this is the certificate that he gave. When you saw the certificate, it must have been so also...
By accident I saw the certificate, and later on I got all the story about it.
Have you ever been to Westerbork?
No, not to Westerbork. I went to Holland many times, but not to Westerbork. I was in Gouda, of course I was. As I managed before, through the Museum of Holocaust in Washington, they sent me even the certificate, personal certificate of prisoner certificate of my late mother. I'll show it to you. You see? This is Susanna Litten, and this is from Zvodau. This was it. Okay?
And they say the date of transfer was in March.
And this...
March 45.
This was... no, she got there... she received there at 1944. 1944. She went there at 1944, and on the death march in 1945, before the Americans arrived. All this information I got from the Museum of Holocaust in Washington.
And Yad Vashem?
No, because you know, and who gave me how did I come to the Washington Holocaust Museum? That the people in the archives of the U.S. Army, the 8th Army Armored Battalion, who actually freed the camp, and they found there a few hundred of starved women, but my mother was not among them, because she went to the death of March beforehand. And then I asked them, where can I get more information about my mother from that camp? And they said, go to the Museum of Holocaust in Washington. They might have it. And they sent me the whole information. Now, my mother, back to my mother a few mornings before, another thing, my mother doesn't have a grave anywhere, as well as my father, but she has a this is in the book as well. She has a place of commemoration at the near the at the I'll show you. She has a place of commemoration at the north of the country of Israel, where there is a place named the Westerville Forest. And this is there's a small sign there by Keren HaYesod. It shows, and there they have a place where people of the Dutch underground are commemorated. And I'll show you the pictures. This is near at Ramot Menashe. This is a picture when some years back we visited this place every year, and my mother is in the center. Shoshana Litten is in the center of the memory, Yisco memory place.
And this is the only memorial?
This is not the only memorial in Israel that I have from my mother. But my mother apparently also this is during a visit with my sons. Now I did visit it also with my grandchildren at the same place. And we have a group of people who are ex-Hachshara people or resistance people from the Dutch origin, and we meet every year at that place or other places. Now, as I said, my mother doesn't have any memory apart from in Israel, but apparently the Dutch people in Gouda and mostly the one lady who is very dedicated to this, did a big scheme to make Stolpersteine in Gouda. She decided that all around 400 Jews perished during the war, during the Holocaust in Gouda, should have Stolpersteine, memory stones, wherever they lived. And among other things, she did so also for the 7 people and 2 of my parents, 9 in total, at the place where the school, the agriculture Hachshara school was. So they did this some years back. They did this actually in back, and I can show you some pictures. The name of the lady who was managing all this operation is Susia Citroen. Susia Citroen was a famous jazz singer, a Jewish jazz singer in the Netherlands, in Gouda. And she made a promise that nearly 400 Jews of Gouda should have Stolpersteine at the place where they lived, either or the place where they studied, like in this. This is a lady, first of all, Susia Citroen. This is a lady who did all the work, and now she really finished her job. There's also a book she published about this, but this is what during the ceremony of the 9 people from the farm. I'll show you the...
Did you attend the ceremony as well?
Yes, of course. I'll show you the pictures. I came there with my son, my youngest son, and now this is the mayor of Gouda during the ceremony, and you see there's a
picture of the
farm.
Of the farm.
Of the farm.
And the farm doesn't exist anymore.
No, the farm was in 1981. It was evacuated.
And the house?
The house as well.
It's a pity.
So This was a all right, just a minute. There's a sign now. These are the, wait a minute. Just a minute. These are the stones at the time, including the first two are from my parents, both Manfred and Shoshana, you see, and the others from others. Mostly were caught by the Germans. One of them perished during the transfer through the Pyrenees. He fell off the mountain actually and died during his fleet to Spain.
This is so special what they did.
Yes, and it was very harsh during the winter to go over that journey. And now I want to show you a picture of myself and my son during the ceremony as well. The ceremony, the laying of the Stolpersteine in Gouda for the 9 perished people from the farm, including my late parents, was in 2012, and this is my son Asaf and myself who attended the ceremony.
Thank you. That must have also been very emotional.
Very, very emotional. Of course, I said Kaddish over there, and you were. This is actually these are the only places. You know, the Stolpersteine in Berlin for my father, the Stolpersteine for my both late parents in Gouda, and the the monument at the Ramot Menashe for my mother. You know, those are the only places that I have for my late parents. You know. So to a few words about the stay at the Ten Berge family, a few moments more.
And here they did a book, and it was in Amersfoort.
This was in Amersfoort, and another few words during my stay there. First of all, at the beginning, most of the time, we were two from the farm. We were two Jewish people at the family. Later on, when Mary got pregnant again with the 7th child, another girl, she, Lida or Eliada later, could not tend all of the children.
I'm just going to show a picture with you and later.
Could not tend for all of the children, and she asked her best friend from Amsterdam to come over from another hiding place at the same city of Amersfoort to be with us, and she was a professional sister as well, so she could tend for the mother. So she came with us too, and at the last 6 months of the war, she was at our place.
Do you remember her name?
Yes, I remember her name. I'll show a picture of her. Nomi Papo.
And Gideon, can I just ask, what was amazing?
This is Nomi Papo, who was also with us.
She was a nurse.
She was a nurse, yes. And she died recently at the age of 98. She lived not far away from us. She was bright until the last moment. Very significant, a very unusual lady.
And given you had a good relationship with Lida?
Yes, I had many years, and now with their offsprings as well. with her family because she had she bore 5 children, boys and girls, and I am in contact with them as well.
And I think something which is very important with the family, the
Ten Bergen.
Ten Bergen, they never, although they were devout Roman Catholics, they never tried to convert you.
Not only that, I'll tell you another story, and that's I remember very well. You know, we had a Jewish education due to my father was religious. We had a good Jewish education at the farm, and I knew everything. And the Catholic family, both Chef and Mary, never did anything to get us converted to Christianity. Never. On the contrary, on one of his journeys, Chef came back and brought with him a siddur, a praying book with a silver covering, and presented that to Lida, who knew to read Hebrew. And Lida and me used to, in a small compartment, small room, we used to read at this siddur from time. She used to read to me because she knew Hebrew. She used to read the stories from the siddur from time to time, and to remind me of the Jewish holidays as well that we did in there. Now, during the end of the war, Chef decided that this was too dangerous to have this prayer book in Hebrew with us, and he decided, he took it from us and buried it in the yard. They had a house, and the house is here as well. They had a house and the yard as well, and they buried it in the yard, and we never found it again because I visited it 2 times, once with my children and nephews of my wife, and once with my grandchildren. And we looked at the yard, the same yard, because other people lived there, but they let us look around and see the building, and we searched and searched, and we never found it again. So it's somewhere buried at the yard, this prayer book, the siddur.
When you were in
this is the house actually we lived in.
And it still exists today.
The house still exists today, but other people live there, but they let us go in after, when we visited it during our visits, to the Netherlands.
And you remember the room you were in? You remember the house?
Yes, so I saw everything, and now even I saw the cellar. Now one thing is this house had a small cellar, which nowadays the local the present tenants use it for wines as a wine cellar, but they're both lawyers, but like my son. But I don't believe, when I saw the cellar, I don't believe how all the family could go through the time of the bombings. We had several bombings during the war. One of the bombing was because we were very, very close to an anti-aircraft field by the Germans. Very, very close. And so we had bombardments from the either American or British planes, and we all had to live for weeks in the cellar. But there was another cellar, non-official cellar, not in the plans of the building, which was under the garage, and this was used mainly during the end of the war, also by me, because when they had actions, when from time to time, the SS used to come around and look for Jews and things like that, or look for other things. and but we got beforehand we got information about that from the underground. We were very, very close with the underground. So we were all prepared. And then they would put me not in the cellar, which everyone knew where the cellar was, but in the unofficial cellar, which was very under a big closet. And so no one could see it and no one could know about it. And at the end of the war, the Germans, the Nazis, started looking for able manpower to be sent to forced labor in Germany. And this also, from time for actions actions by the SS, we knew about those actions beforehand. So one of the big action was I think it was in November 1944, they were looking for all the able men to be sent to Germany, but they used this cellar to hide in and when the Germans came. And at that time, this is a thing we remember clearly, all of us children were sitting at the table when the SS came in to look for Chef, because Chef was one. And he and his neighbors were in the cellar, in this unofficial cellar. And they started to look all over the place with open bayonets, with the bayonets tearing around all the furniture and looking for Chef. And she told them that Chef is out of city and he's far away doing his business. He's not at home. So they started to look. They didn't believe us, so they started to look all over the place from top to bottom, but they didn't find him, of course. And we children, we knew all about this, and we sat silently eating their very, very poor lunch, because that was near to the starving time when there was no food, nearly no food. And us children, we had to do the household working things like washing the dishes and stirring the soup, which was nothing more than a few pieces of meat or no meat at all. So, but they did not found Chef, and from that day they celebrated his second birthday, because they didn't find him. Second birthday for Chef, they didn't find him. But otherwise, other things regarding the army, this was already quite, as I told you before, we had a big anti-aircraft field near to the house. In front of the house was an open space there, open field, and the commander of the base lived at a house near us, not near us, a neighbor house which was formerly by Jews who were sent to the camps, and he boarded that house with his small daughter. He had two other children, grown-up children, who were soldiers at the East. The funny thing was that the daughter of him, the young daughter, was 7 years old, like myself, at the same age as mine. Her name was Ursula. After the war I tried to find her, but I did not. But she came to play with us. And the mother wrote in her memoirs that, look at I see things, look at the people, children of the conquered, including a Jewish child, are playing around with the conqueror's daughter. All continents.
And you remember her?
And this I remember very well, that we played together. And apparently it seems that I was the only one to be able to talk with her, because I knew also German. And she was a German girl, so I talked with her in German. And we were able to contact each other. She did some silly things, she even took out of her father's dressing room, she took some cigarettes, and we used to cut them in small pieces and smoke them in secret, children do, you know, small children. But she played with us. And another thing was that we as children used to go to the anti-aircraft gun field. We were with, I remember it was at the colder times, we were with big coats. And the underground people told us, whenever you see ammunition, you know, things like that, put them in your pockets. And I used to do like them, I remember. And at the evening they used to come back to us or our house and say and collect those patrons, you know, and small ammunition, you know, like light arm ammunition, what you call, not cannon, it's light arm bullets, you know, and things like that. We had the pieces of bullets in our pockets, and we used to give it over to the resistance people. So that, and all we did, you know, and they never knew that I was also Jewish, so it was very dangerous, but we did it. So.
And you know, you went to church, I think.
No, the thing is, I did not go to school, but I did go to church. I did go to church with them, again, without any way to convert myself, but I did go to them as one as the other children. And the funny thing is that after many years, this was I am speaking about 1943, 1944, 1945. After so many years, when I traveled abroad, and even recently, I'll tell you this, I traveled abroad to Italy one time with my wife and one of my sons. We went over to a church in Assisi. Assisi is a nice village in Italy, and we went to the church there. And when we heard the hymns there, I remembered the hymns, the music. I remember the music. The music of this. And even now lately, we had a trip from the Institute of or the Organization of Military History. We went over to, even it was last week, we went over to Nazareth to see the church during the day and other places around from military history. And we attended the Annunciation Church, and we heard the Missa there, because this was on the 25th of December, Christmas Day, you know, and they were praying there, and I heard the hymn, and I remembered the hymn as well. After so many years, I even recorded this. I remember the hymn that they used to sing there. So this was amazing.
But I think they sent you to church because they didn't want the neighbors to be suspicious.
Yeah.
Why are you not going? And
yeah. So I had to go with them. I had to go. On Sundays, they always went to church, you know. But,
and the neighbors, did they
no, the neighbors,
it
was lucky enough, the neighbors were cooperative. I mean, they were incorporate with the underground. They were not the negative. We did not have any negative, apart from the Nazi, you know, who was living there. But this was not an SS. He was an armament officer. He was an anti-aircraft commander.
And Gideon, do you remember Germans marching into? Do you remember German soldiers?
Yes, of course. We went to play with the soldiers at the camp. When I told you that we stole the ammunition, they were young soldiers, and they played with us children. You know,
the German soldiers.
Yeah, they played with us, and I remember them very well. No, the culture of the family, I must say, was amazing, because nearing the end of the war, we as the young children, one day we saw at the upper part of the building, very upper part, a cup of tea, you know, an empty cup there on the verge of the building, and we were worried what it was. And the older children knew what it was. Apparently, later, when the war ended, we were told that we knew actually. We saw it after the war, when the war ended. on the Liberation Day. And Liberation Day suddenly came down another person, and who was a navigator of a plane shot down, an Austrian navigator who asked for a deserter. He was actually a deserter because he came down with a parachute, and he asked for miklat. How do you call it?
A shelter.
Shelter. He asked for shelter. He knocked at the door of the family. This I was told. I didn't know, but I only saw the cut, that there was someone at the attic of the house, and under the roof, you know. So we were told that he came to the house, asked for shelter, and they took him in. For everything they could have been shot, you know, and they took him in for a few weeks. And later, we saw him later when they turned him over to the military police of the Canadians. The Canadians liberated us. So we saw this. This was amazing, that everything, you know, for 3 Jews, a deserter,
and such a large family of their own.
And their own. And this is also written in the book, because when you see the testimony of her, Ellen was who wrote the book. When Ellen's brother wrote the testimony in the book, they said, we could never believe how our parents did such a thing, in spite of us being children, and to endanger us as children for every deed they did.
Because they did endanger.
Yeah, they did endanger children. And they didn't understand it. They could not understand it, how they endangered us as children. That's what they wrote.
Were they upset with their parents because they?
Yes, after many years after, you know.
And I think when you mentioned about the hunger in 44, there was.
Yes, 24 was a big hunger because the Germans took all the agriculture products to themselves. But again, lucky enough, we were lucky because Lida, as you saw in a picture, she didn't look Jewish. Lida did not look Jewish. And she got dressed as a nurse, took her bicycle, dressed up as a nurse, cycled to the different places, to the different villages of the farming villages, took with her very precious clothes, which marketeered by chef, as an exchange for milk, eggs, and flour from those farmers. And this enabled us to survive, because when this I remember, we saw from our building, from our house, how people perished on the street. Perished
from
hunger. They came from other places and they had no food and perished. And in one instance, not speaking about kosher or not kosher, one instance, there was a big rush outside the house at another date, you know. And apparently, we saw all the women of the house, and Lida and everyone get out with knives and pans, not sirim, sirim, where they put food in, where you cooking
like a utensil. It's
utensils. They cook big utensils, got to the street with the knives in the street, and apparently what happened, an old horse died. And in minutes there was no horse, you know. In minutes, took minutes to cut off the horse, and everyone came back with meat, you know. This was
So Lida, in a way, she saved the family by bringing in the food.
Yes, there was no meat, not speaking about meat, but so we had some days we had to eat some this horse food.
Do you remember the hunger? Do you remember?
Yes, I remember the hunger, and even there was a time when there was a lack of water, because Holland has many water, but there was in the system was wet, and instead of washing the dishes, we children did wash the dishes. We said, you know, you don't wash the dishes, you just wipe them off with paper, with paper of newspaper, with papers, you know, we wash them off in order to be clean for the next dinner, you know. So this was quite rough at the time. But
and Gideon, I have to ask you, were the other children, did they ever ask you, how come you look different to us? And
no, they don't. They saw I came from a different family, so they.
And you got on well. You all got on very well with each other.
Yes, we got so well because I did visit them later on when I studied in England. Out of the army, I studied there, and I visited them in 1962. I think there is a picture here. I think there is a picture here as well. I visited them when they were grown up, and we walked through. And another thing I'm doing every year, every New Year, Christmas, every year, I send a cask of fruit, citrus fruit to them.
And this year you sent as well?
I do it from years to years. Even now I send it through a company in Israel which does it very well. And this is very nice. This is a picture taken when I was there at 1962 with the children and the grown-ups already.
It's wonderful that you've kept the connection all these years.
Yes.
And Gideon, can I ask you, what do you remember about the liberation?
Now, the liberation was something special. All of the people got their
you remember the bombing before? You remember?
Yeah, I remember. Well, first of all, the bombing, I have another few things to tell. But during the liberation, the Canadians came in, and all of the people got their big flowers, the orange, which is orange is the national color of Netherlands, orange flowers on their breasts, you know, and they went out and received the Canadian Army tanks and group troops. Very, very nice. This was a very great day for us to be remembered. Now, during a rougher
You remember
time,
the date?
I remember that was on the 5th of May. That was on the 5th of May. Now, this was a very joyful time, and after a few days, one of my father's students, who was also hidden at the same city, Shalom Weiss, he was later the treasurer of the Jerusalem Post in Jerusalem. Shalom Weiss, he came out and collected me, and I knew from the beginning, I knew that I'm going to, because this from the studies I had from my father at the time, that I'm going to Palestine, Eretz Israel. At the time it was Eretz Israel, Palestine, Eretz Israel, and I spent a few days at the newly formed farm. But the farm was newly formed until 1953. And I spent there a short time, but they all were grown-ups and I was small, so I was taken to another city in Dieren, and later Sanford, for an orphan home led by Naftali Asher, and with them in 1946 we made Aliyah, or emigrated as one group to Israel. And this is a picture before this journey to Marseille, from which we emigrated to Israel.
And you on the left?
I'm on the left, yeah. This is all the orphans, so we all clothed in the same with the same clothing.
And the person that came to fetch you, that was...
Yes, the students came to fetch me.
And he's in the picture as well?
No, he's not. No, those are. This is Naftali.
Naftali.
This is Naftali Asher, who is a manager of the group. He came later on to Kvuzat Yavne, and they lived there forever.
And can I ask?
But a different one thing I wanted to mention you during the difficult times we had after the bombing of when the liberation Canadians neared this place, the Germans flew away. They went to the east, fled away, and there was no fighting actually because they all surrendered. But during the last time of the war, prior when the anti-aircraft field people were not present anymore, the Germans started to launch rockets, types of rockets to England. But some of the rockets did not reach their target, and one of the rockets, I'm speaking about the V1s. The V1 was actually like a present rocket flying on low altitude. It was actually a flying bomb with 500 kilo of ammunition, of ammo, and this had a special engine, which was what you call a ramjet, and it worked in small. It had a very unusual and unusual noise. This noise was very mafchid. I call this
frightening.
Frightening. This was a very frightening alarm of it. The engine had a very. This is the ramjet had a very alarming and frightening. Now all of us, the children, when we were at the in the cellar, when they started to launch these rockets, this frightening noise, we knew that whenever the frightening noise is on, it's okay, but when it stopped, the bomb stops down. And in one occasion, I remember very well. One occasion we had one of those rockets going around, and it stopped instantly. And apparently there was a direct hit at the same street we were living in. And after, we as children used to go out after bombings or after things to collect items, to collect shells and shrapnels, and but we came to the street, and there was few buildings away. When there was a building, the building was no more. It was a direct hit on the building with all the inhabitants. They perished from that bomb. So this was very frightening as well during our stay there. Now when the liberation was, and my parents took us, not my parents, the student of my parents took me to where the former Hachshara school was. I tried to ask beforehand, Mary, what about whenever my mother is going to fetch me, and she couldn't answer me, and she kept telling me other things. She avoided this question as much as she could, But apparently, after some times at the orphans group, at the orphans home, Only then I was told later on by the Harry and Asher, Harry Naftali Asher, that both of my parents perished, you know.
And how
But
old
I
were
did
you?
not know.
How old were
anything.
you at that time? When
At
you
that time I was 9 years, less than 10 years old. When April, we emigrated to Eretz Israel. Well, this I remember very well because we ate only matzos it was Chol HaMoed, Pesach, 1945, April 1945, and we had matzot on the ship because it was just during the Chol HaMoed. We had all the matzot during the Seder. We had, I think it's still in Holland, but Chol HaMoed wasn't there.
And can I ask, when you left the family, I think Mary wanted to adopt you.
Yes, but Mary was apparently Mary was quite sad, but she didn't make any. She knew that I belonged to Israel, to Palestine. They didn't make any harsh or didn't make any objections for me to be taken by.
But was it difficult to go?
But for me it was not so difficult because I knew what my destination was. But for her it was very difficult. She wrote it in a book because it was so harsh and quite sudden, you know. It was quite sudden because only a few days after the liberation I was taken away from her.
And to say goodbye to all the brothers and
Yes,
sisters?
of course I said goodbye to all of them.
It must have been very hard.
Yes, this was hard, but and they apparently knew. I told them that I was Jewish and all this, and I have a destination already from my father's time, you know, from my father's. Yes, this is more or less the story.
And coming to Israel with that group, was it legal or did you have to go?
No, this time, as an orphan group, I don't know how they manage it. We all had certificates. This group was the whole orphanage got certificates, as well as their managers and people going with them. We came to Haifa, and I was met by good friends of my family, my family Froman, and with them I went to, as I told you before, I kept 6 months I lived in Jerusalem with them. Then I went over to an agriculture elementary school in Kfar Bialik at an installation named Ahava, Mossad Ahava. This is a special other story because this Ahava place, this is actually closing of a circle, because apparently Ahava was established in Berlin in the 30s, and one of the instructors at the Ahava was my late mother. And my late mother met there my father, and they wed in Berlin. I even have their marriage certificate because the students kept it for me. I got it at the bar mitzvah time. I got an album from the farm and some copies of different papers. My birth certificate from Danzig, my father's birth certificate, and my parents' marriage certificate. All I got during my bar mitzvah at the farm from the students of my parents. They gave it to me on my 13th birthday, on my bar mitzvah. And this was very joyful for me, of course. And from the Ahava, I lived there, I was there for 4 years, up to the end of elementary school. Later I moved to Haifa with, again, other very, very hard friends from my parents, family Barimbaum. When I attended the technical high school of the Technion in Haifa for 4 years, and then I enlisted to the army. I lived with the brothers of the same family in Tel Aviv, enlisted to the army at the Ordnance Corps, which was in Hebrew it's חיל הטנא וההחזקה, formerly חיל החימוש. I stayed there with them for 26 years until my retirement from the army, and later on I worked at a technical firm in Tel Aviv and later in Ramat Gan, the same time, for another 34 years. So all in technical aspects, and mainly in optics and electronics, which I studied in England during my army's time. And I retired as a lieutenant general, and now I'm busy, among other things, busy with our cooperation of fallen soldiers of the same corps.
And Gideon, you met your wife and you got married in 63.
Now I got married in 1960. No, I married her in 60. I got acquaintance with her in 1962, and I married Dvorah from the Rosen household. She was a daughter of the formers of Kfar Azar, a Moshav of Dim. She was, we built our house in Kfar Azar, which we are now in as well, the same house. We have 3 boys, 3 children, 3 boys, and 4 grandchildren. And they all went with us to Holland to see the places, to meet the people who's actually, the children of the people who actually saved us.
And you kept in contact with the family all the years?
I kept in family all the years, and I went visit them nearly once a year since COVID time.
And you did an amazing thing. You organized Chasidei Umot Olam, Rightous amongst the nations.
We organized Chasidei Umot Olam to the Tenbergen family, and the author of the book, Ellen, came and received, on behalf of the family, she received the medal and planted the trees at the forest, at the Har Herzl there.
And here we have a picture.
We have the pictures here from the ceremony.
That also must have been extremely emotional.
In 1989. This was in 1989.
And there's the medal, and is she still alive?
Ellen is still alive. We correspond, yes, of course. Ellen is still alive. Some of her brothers are still alive, but I'm in contact with them. Now the thing is, a few words to end this. I think that what kept me well through all these years is some kind of optimism. One thing I learned from all this is to look at the cups half full, at the mid full cup always. This is the strategy I have during all my life.
Instead of being half empty, it's half full.
Half full, but I look at the half full side of the cup, always, of the positive part, and I try to explain everything in a positive way as much as possible, you know. So look at the bright side of life. This is actually my...
and this is the message you give to your children and grandchildren?
We give to my children, look at the bright side of life, and never lose hope, you know, never lose hope. And I think even in the harsh times we are nowadays, we will overcome. I think I'm sure we will overcome.
And Gideon, that's been amazing. But Gideon, can I ask you a very difficult question?
Okay, go ahead.
Looking back and looking what an amazing danger that they did, endangering their own children by taking you in and taking the other two Jewish girls in as well. What would you do if you were in their position? Have you ever thought?
It's very difficult to know, yes.
It's the most difficult thing one could ever face?
Yes. It's very difficult. I think this is very difficult, and we have to tackle every problem when it comes, you know, and it depends when it comes. But especially for my wife, I must say, my late wife, you know, who also was in the army for some years, and I think there's a picture of her here over there, when she was the chief of office of a highly ranked officer. You can see the picture here.
Yeah, it's a lovely picture.
Yes. So both her and me, we try to assist people, always to assist people, not only family people, all the time. I think this is our attitude. This is one thing I learned. And to be generous to all people, not to think about ourselves, and that we try to do this all our lives, you know. And charity, and this is one of the things that we wrote on my late wife's grave as well, that she always was in favor of great charity, and she did not look on herself, you know. So this is actually what part of the answer to your question, you know, that we put this as an aim, to aim in life, you know.
And I think you've instilled it in your children.
Yes, and I think we do help as much as we could, and that's what I'm doing nowadays. Actually, I'm at the management of the group that we assist the orphans and the war orphans and the widows of our corps, you know, throughout these times, you know.
Well, I just want to thank you, if I can. Gideon, it's been such a tremendous zchut, what an honor and a privilege to be in your home and to be in your presence.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Gideon, really,
thank you very much.
Gideon, you are an icon. Really, you are a hero. I think your story is, Loyaman, it's hard to believe. It's miracles and miracles.
Thank you very much.
And you had the most amazing parents that are such heroes. They really were heroes.
And I'm glad that my mother, also my father, but mainly my mother, is commemorated at the new museum nowadays, at the Second World War Jewish Warriors Museum at Latrun, you know.
It's so important. But to look from this little boy here in this, that this family took you in, and wow, you know, I'm just so, there are no words to thank you.
Okay.
And you should just have mazel and bracha, and I'm extremely grateful to you.
Okay. Shalom Weiss, who was one of the late Shalom Weiss, who was one of the pupils of my late parents at the farm. At the farm they had it. We invited one of the Dutch resistance group ladies, who was with my mother, and we invited them as well, and we took them to a sightseeing and to everything, and a non-Jewish, of course. Her name was Hilda van Noorden, and she was an artist, you know. This was an example of what she did. I have others, you know. She was an artist. And she was together with my mother at the Resistance. And when we visited Caesarea, I took her to Caesarea to look at the ancient remains of the Romans and Herod. And we strode there, and at one instant she took me aside and said, I have a story for you. Probably you don't know it. And I said, what is it? And I said, you remember that there was an informer in our group who informed about your mother, and which led eventually to the loss of her? I said yes, and said it may be some kind condolence for you that we caught the informer and we fired him, without a trial. And said that's actually the story.
They killed him.
We caught him and put him on the firing squad and killed him, on the instance for that reason. But eventually, we did it. So this is maybe this will be some condolence for you after so many years. But eventually, he was caught, and they tried quickly by us, Field trial. We had a field trial, So this is another short story.
Well, thank you so much, Gideon. Really, it's just been incredible. There's no words, really.
Yes, so there are many stories around this period, this harsh period during the Second World War.
But Gideon, can I ask you, in Holland, you had the very best Chasidei Motalam, the most incredible people, but then you also had those that informed, and in your family you had both.
We must remember another thing I kept telling people. In spite of the harsh period in Holland, the number of Rightous among nations people in Holland is the biggest compared to the Jewish community. Because the only one exceeding the number of Rightous among nation people is Poland. But you must remember, in Poland there were 3 million Jews, and there are around 7,000 Rightous among nations nominated in Poland. In Holland there were 102,000 Jews only, and a very harsh some pro-Nazi population, and they have had over 6,000 for the small 6,000 Rightous among nations. So this you can all see at the encyclopedia of the Rightous among nations people, the book about Holland. I have the book. You have seen probably the book.
But it's true. Holland.
The English book. I have it here over.
Per ratio, it has the highest amount.
Per ratio is the highest amount.
In the whole of Europe. It's the highest
in all
amount.
of Europe. All of Europe.
And in your family, you had both. You had those that saved you, and those that informed on your mother.
Yeah. So, apart from that, we also keep speaking about Rightous among nations. Apart from the Ten Bergen family, previous to that, we nominated them in 1989. But previous to that, in the 1970s, we nominated also Dirk van Schaik, who was in charge of the agriculture at the farm, and he did a lot with the resistance group, and actually led my mother to the existence group. So he got Rightous Nations as well in Jerusalem.
Thank you so much, Kevin. Okay. Gideon, yeah.
Now, during the last years, I'm looking for family ties, genealogical information regarding mainly my father's side, and because of my mother's side, the family, Sir Louis, I know a lot and I have a lot of information, including family trees and things dating back. And as I said, I'm busy looking for other family ties through my heritage, and especially during a site called Jenny, which gives a lot of information from time to time about my family connections. Now, coming across one of the connections through a colleague of mine at the organization of underground or resistance groups, Jewish resistance people, and also people out of the Hachshara, out of the schools, different schools of agriculture in Holland. I came across a lady who was at that time in Berlin, and she phoned me from there, and she told me that she came across a book in which my former family name is mentioned frequently. And I was very much, because this is my father's side, which I'm looking for, which I have very little information. And apparently, she told me that the book is in German, but I can always also procure a copy, which is a very good translation in English. And she said the Litten, two people named Hans Litten are very much mentioned in the book, especially one of them. So I said, okay, give me the information, and I in a very short time, through the internet, I procured the book, and it's called My Father's Country, and this is actually the book. This is a German, the translation into English, a very good translation from the German original book. Now the book is written by a lady named Wipke Bruns. Wipke Bruns, the late, she died a few years ago. Wipke Bruns, I'll show you a picture of her. This is Wipke Bruns, who is the author of the book. Now, Wipke Bruns is used to be a very famous person in Germany, like Chaim Yavin in Israel, parallel to him. She was a television commentator and an author with the Stern magazine. And in one of her journeys, she was in Jerusalem. She was stationed in Jerusalem, and she wrote another book, Mein Jerusalem, my Jerusalem of mine, which is very about Jerusalem, and she is very pro-Israeli. And in my country, my father's country, this is a story of a German family. Her father was Major Hans-Georg Klamroth, and he was a major in the Waffen-SS, apparently, in the Storm SS, in the fighting force of the SS. But it happens to be that he was enlisted by the Hitler regime in 1933. But because of the fact that he was a petty officer, a lieutenant during World War I, and all the officers who were in World War I were at the time young officers or young soldiers, were later on enlisted to the Nazi army. So this book is about him. But what now back to the Litten. How come the Litten? Now when he was a petty officer at the, or he was a lieutenant actually, a lieutenant at the First War. And when he grew up later on, when the war ended, he grew up as an industrialist. He was a very successful industrialist, and among other things, he had a private secretary by the name of Hans Litten. Hans Litten, who was also an advocate, he was also a lawyer, but he was his personal secretary as he is at the factory, and in spite of the fact that he was part Jewish, he worked with them all those years. Now, when Gog was enlisted to the German Reich regime, Gog he decided that due to the fact that Hans Litten was such a successful secretary, he wanted him to work with him, even that he was enlisted as a major at the Waffen-SS, even that he was part Jewish, but he never told anyone about it, of course. And he worked with him for some years until 1944. What happened in 1944? Major Klamroth, George Hans Klamroth, who was actually an enlisted major at the Waffen-SS, decided that, as others decided, that they have to cut down Hitler. And he got in touch and enlisted with the other officers of the German regime, other officers, to overcome Hitler, and in some way even to try to murder him, to murder Hitler. And they formed a group, a very, very known group, and they named the act as the Valkyrie action. There's a movie, so the Valkyrie film, and he was one of the officers enlisted by this known colonel of the Valkyrie group, in which they tried to overcome and to murder Hitler at the Wolf's base at Eastern Europe. That was the main base from which they which they planned all the attacks on Russia and the East. So he was one of the group, and as we all know, they sent the colonel. I don't remember at the moment the name of the colonel, but it's very known. They sent the colonel to the Wolf's base, which was a very big base in the forests of eastern Poland, and they tried to eliminate Hitler with a bomb inside a briefcase, which was put under the table of the conference room where Hitler attended a meeting, a very important meeting. Apparently the bomb was not big enough, the charge was not big enough, and it was unsuccessful. Hitler was only armed was wounded only lightly, and they found out about the plot. The German regime found out about the plot, and they executed all the officers involved in this plot, including Georg Hans Klamroth. And they even executed him because he was, even they did not execute him by a firing squad. They wanted to make it more dreadful, and they hanged him instead. Now Hans Litten managed to somehow to flee and to be caught to a forced labor camp. And this was all arranged because nobody actually knew that he was half Jewish, and he was only at a labor camp, and he managed to up to the end of the war, he managed to get alive out at this harsh labor camp, and he even tended the widow of Klamroth, of Major Klamroth, and so when I saw his name, I said to myself, maybe this is part of my family. I'll try to reach the author of the book, Wibke Bruns, and to ask her if there are any descendants of this Litten, of this Hans Litten. And she told me that Hans Litten had two sons. One of them is still alive, the other son, and he is an ex-judge in Hanover. He lives in Rainer Litten. He lives in Hanover. And she said, I'll ask him if he wants you to contact him. But I didn't say I've been Jack Robinson, you know. A day after that, my inquiry, he already contacted me. Rainer Litten, the son of Hans Litten. And he told me, and he said, you are lucky, because my father, this Hans Litten, was very interested in genealogical information, and I started to look after his papers and books, and what I found out was that your family, about your father, he even has a limited edition of my father's thesis at the Humboldt University among his books, among his information. And apparently they seem to be related to some years back, you know, to some great-great-great-grandfather, same grandfather. So we somehow are related. And I said, and they said it's the most the most funny information was that in Israel, as I told my story before, I had an uncle, and the uncle had a daughter, Miriam Litten. He had a daughter, and she. I was in contact with his daughter, of course, and I even managed to meet the uncle, because the uncle was killed during a Syrian aircraft assault on Nahariya at 1948. He died by the bombing of the Nahariya main street. But his daughter Miriam, I got in contact with her. I was in contact with her, but I lost contact because she was divorced, and she got a different name. And the funny thing was that this Rainer Litten said, you know, you have a niece in Israel? I said, yes. I said, what? And he said, I know, she has a different name now, and but he gave me a different name. So I found out through him. I found her again. I'm now in contact with her, of course. Through all this, through Germany, I found it.
That's amazing.
Amazing. I found I recontacted her after some years, you know, and with her new name. So, but she came back afterwards with her previous name. So she's Miriam Litten again after that. And she has a few sons as well, so I got acquainted with them. So this is a one story, which is Rainer. And apparently I got in contact with Rainer Litten, and when there was a commemoration of my father at Berlin in 2010, which I attended with my son, he also came to the ceremony, which was at the Humboldt University, to my late father. He came with his wife, and so...
But you never knew him then?
No, I met him. This was the first time I met him.
It's the first time you met him?
He and my son, and we had a lot of common because my son is a lawyer too. And later on, he came to Israel with a group. And after that he came another time to Israel as because there is a group named the Israeli German Lawyers Group, and he came with that group, and he attended at the local the local bar of Tel Aviv, because my son was at the ethic committee of the group of the bar of Tel Aviv, and he hosted him and his whole group from other lawyers. He was a judge, and he hosted them at the group, and so he met him too, and he gave there a lecture at the bar of Tel Aviv. So he was in good connection and with my son, and later on I visited him with my wife in Berlin. We came to visit Rainer, and he came out in Berlin. There was an interesting fact that in Israel you can change your family name every 7 years, you know, in Israel. In Germany you cannot. In Germany you can only change your name during a marriage. But during marriage they give you the option either to carry the name of the man or the woman. So they can not always according to the man. But this Rainer has 4 children. He has four children, 3 sons and a daughter. No, 3 sons and 2 daughters. Okay. So the daughters, when the daughters' time came, when they married, they made a poll, you know, Agrala, you say? Yeah, a poll. They made a poll. What will be the future family name? And the Litten won in both cases. So all the children are called Litten, and not according to the men. The men, of course, are stayed Litten, but the 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls, are all Litten. And we met some of them in Berlin, and they came with their children. It was very nice to this family meet. This is one story. Another story is, the book mentioned another Hans Litten, who is a nephew from this Litten, and they mentioned another Litten. This is even more. This is a very, very worldwide known story. And if you have not heard about Hans Litten, the lawyer, now this is a very it's not worldwide known, and I'm sorry that this is not worldwide known, because if they even named the street after him in Mitten, Berlin, because there was another Hans Litten who was a lawyer, 27 years old, and he was not fully Jewish. He was Jewish by his father. By the way, Rainer's grandfather was chief of the Kehila in Königsberg some years back. You know Königsberg,
Sure,
which is
yes.
Kaliningrad now, Russia. He was chief Rosh Kehila, he was chief of the Kehila. Now, the other Hans Litten was a lawyer, and he was part Jewish, and his mother was not Jewish, so he's actually not Jewish, but according to Chukei HaHagira, you know, Shvut, he was. So he was a lawyer, and he defended mostly working personnel in Berlin. Now, when Hitler emerged in the 20s and later on 1930, one of his ways to conquer the city, the population, by to conquer the population was through working unions, and in Berlin, the union or the working, there were two big unions, one of the communists and one of the socialists, not the National Socialists, the Socialist Union. At that time, they were both the strongest unions in Berlin and not the National Socialists. So he tried in order to conquer Berlin, he sent over his Sturmabteilung, SA, people at the brown uniforms to conquer Berlin, to blast out union gatherings and things like that by harsh force, in order to get more union workers to choose his social Nazi party union. And in one of the instances, there was a big gathering of workers at the dancing hall in Berlin, and the SA group people came in and tried to blast the gathering, and even murdered two of the workers. And at that time, that was in 1931, only 1931, and at that time the police was still active, the regular police was still active in Berlin, and they caught the two murderers, and they had to trial them. And then all the liberals, some of the liberals, or not all of the liberals, some of the liberals in Berlin decided that they have to nominate a good lawyer to be the prosecutor at the trial. And they chose Hans Litten to be the prosecutor on the trial of those two murderers of the SA who murdered the workers. And this was a big trial. This is all issued in a book by an American doctor, and also later on filmed as a biographical film by the BBC. And I came across all this later on, but the story is that the trial was actually, there were actually films of the trial. The trial was held in a big trial house in Berlin. Many people came around because of the reason that Hans Litten, the liberals, asked Hans Litten to be the prosecutor and to put Hitler on the witness stand. And apparently Hitler came on the witness stand, and he interrogated Hitler himself, and he proved that the SA is a group run by the Nazis, and the head of the Nazis is Hitler. That's the reason. And this was a very, very rough trial, but eventually the judge got cold arms, or fed away, you know, because of the popularity at that time of Hitler already. And somehow he kind of dismissed the connection of well proven by Hans Litten, that Hitler is actually running the SA and he is in charge of this murder. But the trial was not so successful because the judge could not, was afraid to get that justice the decision. And after this trial, all the documents of the trial were kept, you know, of course. And after this trial, all the liberals told Hans Litten to leave Berlin because it's very dangerous for him to stay there and to flee to another country. But he decided, he said, I have my clients here and I have to defend all these clients and I can't leave. And apparently in 1933 he was caught by the Nazi regime, not of any reason, but what you call in Hebrew, how do you call it, matzar, just matzar. He was just caught by the German and driven to a concentration camp, and from one camp actually to another camp. He was, for 5 years, he was at the camp, actually. He was actually 5 years at the camp, and he ended at Dachau. He was tortured. They took out one of his eyes, and at 1938 he took his life. And the German Justice Department has a big bust commemorating him. There's even a street in Berlin named after him, and the lawyers' bar in Berlin is called the Hans Litten Bar, even today. They called it after him. And the story was actually later on was made by an Irish author as a play, and another play is Taken at Midnight, which was played in England for some time, and is mainly about his mother, who during those 5 years when he was imprisoned, during those 5 years, he was she tried to free him. She even sent a petition by 80 people of the House of Lords in England to Hitler, but Hitler threw it away, and there was no success. But apparently this same author who made a play about the whole story, which I just told you, he made another play mainly pertaining to the mother's tries to free him. And this play was held in England, and later on the Israeli theaters, both Hakamari and Habima, tried to fought actually to get this play in Hebrew, to get the rights of the play, and apparently Habima got the authority to play the play, and this was held in Tel Aviv some years back. I was as an acquaintance with the family, with Hans Litten. I was invited to the first play, and it's called Netzar B'Chatzot, or you call it Taken at Midnight.
Taken at midnight.
And I tell you, this is first. No, here is better. This is all in English.
It's amazing. And it was well received?
Well received. Now, as his mother, Gilal Mago played the main part of the mother, and Ran Dankner played Hans Litten. And I was invited to the
it was like the opening.
To the play, of course, and I went there a few times with all my family members. We saw it all, and this is actually you can see it in England in English too. The whole story is here in English, and in short, which
it's wonderful. And this is it's relations.
We are some kind of a nephew, a far nephew, some
distant
nephew.
Relatives.
Yeah.
And is there any other Litten family in Israel?
No, apart from my family,
yeah.
But only Miriam Litten and their sons, but there.
And this is, wow, all your research.
Yeah, this is a real story. I mean, not many people know about this, but this is a real story. You can read it now. And so this is some other connections I found out, and it happened to be more known in Israel now due to this play.
That's wonderful. Well, you come from such a very special family. Your parents were really, they were such heroes, and I so appreciate you relating this to
this
me.
Is okay.
Thank you so much.